I think that the reality, going back to the earlier like background question, is the manufacturing world almost favors electrical and mechanical engineers, which
Mm,
don't necessarily, they come from programs, including myself, that doesn't have that much exposure to software best practices. And obviously, I knew how to program in assembly, I learned how to program in C, and so you can design embedded systems, but a lot of times that is almost obstructed from, there is, you could technically do version control, but if you're the only
mm,
person working on that device, it doesn't technically really matter. But as soon as you introduce that to a group of people, or you want to work in a team environment where multiple contributors can make those changes, that's, I want to say, not as well thought to
mm,
electrical and mechanical engineers who are currently, I want to say, hired into those roles, right? And then
mm,
if you're brought into those organizations, I've personally not seen, let's say, like a course or something, that even a
mm.
certification or even an OEM talk about, here are the best practices in a control system environment when it comes to TDD, test driven development, or any other like CI/CD pipelines. There's almost nothing or no content on that side besides some of the videos that you've put together.
Yeah,
But
but that's the shame. So going back to the thing about sharing knowledge. So now running my company, going out there and doing this for people and getting feedback. So getting private emails, getting LinkedIn messages. I can tell you there are a lot of companies doing this. This isn't a dream that I have that I wish the world would adopt these things. The big players, even the really big players, they do this. It's just that I'm surprised about is that even the big companies, I obviously can't say any names, but even the big companies that are doing this, you can't even go, if you google it, you're not going to find anything. So it's somehow, it's really hidden away from us. So this is just not a dream to have these pipelines when you do a commit of your code, and then we have a build server that runs all the tests automatically for you and verifies that all functionality is there on the low level testing. So not the integration, low level testing runs all the tests. No, they are doing this. Somehow it's like, why aren't people talking about it? Why aren't they showing it? And again, yeah, I know it's an advantage, right? It's a huge advantage. They can literally, they have a whole factory, they make a change, they run all the tests quickly, and with high certainty they know this isn't going to break anything. Of course, that's a competitive advantage. So of course they, is that a reason? Again, why do we do it in the software industry? Why aren't we doing it in the OT? No idea.
and I guess like maybe one argument, again, like to put us back on the same conversation, I think, is because to some extent we don't have the same tooling, right? I think that the
Yeah.
tooling has been slower to develop, and I think that we can also bring in the argument of proprietary platforms. So it's not as easy to, let's call it, even version control
Mm,
some of the current software, including the stuff that's written in ladder logic, because simply put, again, I think it's not big enough of a market, let's say, for, let's call it, GitHub, to create a full visual a view of that software. So it becomes a niche subject.
yeah.
And even though you can version control, you don't get all the features. So I think then there's this conversation around only the best companies in the world have developed fairly proprietary also
Mm, yeah.
tools to allow their engineers to version control, and they're also not going to share it. So I think
Mm,
there's the similar point of, they have an advantage, they've developed that advantage, they want to keep that in house. And if you're one of the engineers lucky enough to end up in that company and be mentored
mm.
by someone who's in that position, then you'll learn maybe the best practices as well as the tools. But otherwise, you're not going to have that opportunity, right?
Yeah, and then you can have as much theory as you want, right? I can stay here and talk about it. Like, this is the advantages. This is what you can do. But if you don't see it actually in action, so to speak, it's not as easy to relate to it. Because of course we have our mindset of how we're. Before I started with, when I did software long time ago, I had the mindset of, this is how I'm going to compile. This is how I'm going to test. I did everything manually. It was never in the concept of my mind of having, of how, first of all, why I would automate it and how it actually is done. It was like, when I saw it, I was like, oh, okay, so this is how it could be done. Simpler things like version control. When the first time I encountered version control was in the late 90s. And I was like, yeah, but why do I need this? What's the problem with my folders and files? Why do I need this? And then I saw it and I was like, okay. And it only took me a few weeks to realize, okay, I should always be using this. Even if I'm alone, I should be using this. So I can just go back if I make a mistake. I use this for my own websites. I'm the only developer, but I still use it to be able to go back to something if I screw up. Anyways, and if you don't see it, it's just much harder to reason about it or to imagine the benefits of it.